Hey, and welcome back. Okay, fans of me, whenever a few are out there, what's my favorite video game? It still hasn't changed. It's Final Fantasy Tactics, and I was playing it recently. I was going through another run of it, and I got to one of the boss battles against the Marquis of Limberry, and when I was attacking him, he had this counter set that was called Shirahadori. Shirahadori, I was like, what the heck is that? Shirahadori, you might know what it is. You might not know that you know it, but what it is, and you see it in like several movies, it's when somebody like takes a katana and they kind of cut down, and then with your hands you stop it. And I thought it was kind of funny, and it kind of got me thinking about things. I don't ever like to talk about politics on my channel. I love talking about politics in real life, but I never do it on my channel. And when I saw that example of Shirahadori, I was like, that's the perfect analogy as to, like, why? What's the problem with it? So it's like, if I asked you, hey, I've got my katana right here, I'll take it out for you. Let's do some Shirahadori. Yeah, here we go. Go ahead, catch. If I did that, anybody out there would say, oh, hell no. Obviously. Clearly and obviously they would say, hell no. But I want to take a minute and to put it into words why. Why would you say hell no to that proposition? And I've been thinking about it, and I think that that's the perfect example of what it seems political discussions have become nowadays. It's become like Shirahadori. It's become basically like catching a blade with your hands. And that might work in the movies, but in real life, it just doesn't work. And again, let's put it into words exactly why. Everybody would say no if I said, let's practice it. And to put it into words, I would say Shirahadori is an example of a situation where there is zero gain and there's extreme risk. So if I wanted to do that, if you were crazy enough to do it, and if you actually caught it, there would be this moment where we're like, wow, that was really cool. And we get on with our day. And if you missed, and you could miss in several ways, perhaps I took a certain angle to it, perhaps you didn't quite clench your hands at the right time, you were too early, you were too late. You have to be perfect doing that, right? In fact, think about it, on the battlefield, it would never work. It only works in those like katas and those practices. It would never work in real life because the person who's slicing you doesn't care. He's not really impressed with, you know, how cool it is that you cut the blade. He's going to keep on trying to stab you and kill you. But anyway, that makes an analogy for what political discussions have become. Like I said, I used to hate talking about politics. Now I actually enjoy it, but I can only do it with a few people that I really trust. Because that's what it's become nowadays. It's become a situation that's so poisonous. If you don't find somebody that you agree with, you know, like I feel like before, in older days and older times, I used to be able to find people that I disagreed with and say, well, I disagree with you, but this is why and this is why, and, you know, we'd have a conversation, and it's like, okay, you know, at the end of the day, we don't see eye to eye, but I don't hate you or anything. Hopefully you don't hate me. But now it's become like that. And Shinken Shirahadori is so, like I said, you have to be so precise. And the gain is so little and the punishment is so severe that if you really just stop and think about it, it's like the only viable option is to avoid it. If some crazy maniac just comes up to you and says, hey, let's do that, you're going to be like, hell no. And I think that that's how a lot of us are for politics these days. It's like, why would I even bother, jumping into that conversation? All there is just like name calling and bad feelings and people just talking past each other. But the thing is, I love controversial topics. I love talking about race. I love talking about, men and women. I love talking about feelings on abortion. I love talking about religion. I love talking about, as I've done before on my channel plenty of times, I talk about things that are really, hard to talk about. And, when I did my previous video that was on, religion, I don't feel like any problem. I could talk about religion all day. I could talk about religious brutality all day. It's politics, especially these days. It's politics where you just have no wiggle room. I think it was when I was when I was growing up, I gave this example. There's this movie that I saw, and I saw it like a couple of years ago, and it kind of got me thinking. When I was young, I saw this movie, what was that movie called? It was that Elvira movie. It was the movie with that woman Elvira, really beautiful, and she was like the perfect example to me of why it was fun to be liberal when I was a kid, So, like, in that movie, she's like, the cool, beautiful, Hollywood, fun actress, and it's like everybody would want to be like a friend of hers or around the environments that she's around. And the conservatives, the ones who were like in the town, they're like stuffy and boring and hypocritical, and that was kind of the impression that you typically get of conservatives. And that's when I was a kid, like it used to be so fun to be a liberal. And now I look at liberals and I think that a lot of them have just kind of gone crazy. Like a lot of their basic ideas and things that they stand up for, they're so like fundamental. It's like, yeah, of course that's true. Like we want rights for everyone. We want, human rights for, women and, everybody. But the way they go about it has become so insane. So like a couple of years ago, there was that guy that, roundhouse kicked a woman over abortion. He roundhouse kicked a woman, to protect women's rights. It's gone completely off the rails, And like I said, it's a shame because I really like talking about controversial topics, and I think a lot of us do. It's fun, or at least maybe fun is not the right word. It's interesting, and they can be some of the deepest conversations that you can ever have. But like you have to, allow people who disagree with you into the conversation, because they could bring an attitude that you've never considered, you've never thought of, and that's what university to me used to be. 1998, when I graduated, I went to college, and there were so many interesting people. They had such different views, but they expressed them like so intelligently. Like, I'll give you one example. I remember when so there was this there was a situation that was brought in the book, and it was basically like, what should we do for a lot of the like Mexican or like South American people who come to America, and we want to get them speaking English because it'll be beneficial to them. They can go into the community. What's the best way to do that? And so I would hear both sides, and like you hear one side and you're like convinced by it, then you hear the other side like, I'm convinced by that. Like, these are really good arguments. But it was just an example of how you can work through it. So the first one said, we need to do like the speed English. Yeah, teach them like really fast, get them into these classes. That way they can learn English really fast and adapt as quick as they can, and so they'll be ready to, get out into the broader society and, get good jobs and contribute. First you hear that, I was like, yeah, that's makes sense. Then there came the counter argument, and it was like, no, like speed, it's ridiculous. You can't do that with language because some people don't pick it up that fast. So what you have to do is you have to take time and support them along the way, and speed is not the way to do it. And I was like, oh man, that makes sense too. So this is an example, like going through college, it puts you with both sides of the argument, It specifically laid out both sides of the argument, or, not both sides, several sides. The point was that anybody could say anything, and that's what I can't stand today. I feel like most of our conversations, they're just strangled. You can't say what you want to say. If it's controversial, if it isn't politically correct, then you can't say it. Like how many YouTube channels have you seen that have gotten wiped out in the last, 5-10 years? It didn't used to be that way. Anybody could say whatever they wanted, and we had this idea that free speech is a very, okay, now I'm already getting into one side of the argument, so probably some people are, making up their minds one way or the other. I just want to make this a fairly short video. I just wanted to say that these days, political conversations specifically has become like Shinken Shirahadori. It's become to the point where it's not even worth it, The best thing to do is avoid it. And so even on this channel, like I said, I'm going to call this video the dreaded political conversation, because it's not dreaded to me. Like I said, I love it. I love talking about those kind of things, and I love having open-minded people to talk about them with. The problem is that there's nothing but consequences, and there's very few, if any, benefits. I think the benefits would be just really great conversations with really smart people. But it's become so hard. And now I see most smart people, just avoiding having conversations. And I think that that's kind of a shame. But even I myself, I don't want to throw my hat into the ring. I don't want to say, what it is that I feel on these things, unless I feel like people are generally there with me. So when I talk about Japanese topics, some of the really controversial but interesting topics, when I talk about hikikomori, or when I talk about, parasite singles, when I talk about the Soushoku-kei Danshi, the herbivore guys, they're really, really fun topics to explore, and I'm glad that I've actually used my channel to explore them somewhat. But I don't want, conversations to be like Shirahadori. I just want it to where we can talk about it. Even if we disagree, even if we vehemently disagree, I want to just be able to say what it is that, we feel. And I think that's really all that I want to say with this video is, I wanted to get it off my chest that it's been kind of killing me, that we just can't seem to talk to each other these days. And it's different from when I was a kid. I feel like we could at least have the conversations, and these days I don't feel like we can even have the conversations. People are so mad at each other so quickly, and it devolves so quickly, and I don't want to see that. So anyway, that's what I wanted to say. If people out there, if I get enough groundswell for people who want to say, like, I do want to hear and I do want to have these conversations, and I want to hear them on your channel, maybe I'll, make some sort of concession towards that. But for the time being, I just wanted to say, let's just have the conversations. Whatever it is, let's just have those conversations. 見てくれてありがとうございました。さよなら。One little quick extra word, for those who are sticklers, Shinken Shirahadori, I did a little bit of research. It's not, so when I first mentioned that, I talked that with my wife, who's Japanese, and she said, yeah, that's like when you catch the blade. And when I looked it up online, Shinken Shirahadori is not necessarily just catching a blade. it's like fighting. It's when you fight somebody and they have a blade and you have nothing. So you're just defending yourself with your bare hands against someone who has a blade. But when I looked it up, Shinken Shida Hadori on Japanese Wikipedia, that's literally what it said, was like when you take two hands and stop a blade that's coming down. So, you know, for the time being, I'm going to use it as that. Shida Hadori is catching the blade, but it could also be used, you know, for the sticklers out there, it could be used just for fighting someone with a katana with your bare hands. Okay, that's all I want to say. Sayonara.